Okay, so I've teased the channel concept of presenting a sailing channel through the perspective of a naval architect who's lived aboard for 35 years. But I guess I probably better explain what it is a naval architect does. There's a very low level of understanding of what's involved in that profession. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about how I got into it. But essentially, the job is to be the band leader, the one who coordinates the efforts of a design. Those efforts would involve electrical design, piping, structure. There are a number of parts to the design of a vessel. You'll never hear me say that I designed such and such a vessel, because that's, to me, that's an insult to the rest of the team. Every project I've been involved in has had team members, and without the smallest gear, no clock tells time. So my attitude about it is that I'm sort of the coordinator. And so what you do is you take a concept that someone has for what they want. This obviously is different in the commercial boat world, because that concept is often very specific. It often involves someone's livelihood. It always involves a higher degree of regulation. And you analyze what they want, you look at the applicable regulations, and you find a way to navigate from one to the other. And you come down to producing a product that, at the end of the day, you said would do a certain thing, and you have to be very sure that it does. So we're far more aware in the commercial boat world than the yacht world of things like weight, stability. Those things are all important to any floating structure design, but the real difference from land architecture, of course, is that our foundation is water. It's fluid. So every change you make in one aspect has an opposite reaction, and you've got to know what that is before you decide to make those changes. So it's essentially consulting and advising on the decision-making process that gets you from your original idea to your end product. And I've been very fortunate to have some really super interesting projects that were challenging. And at the end of the day, some of them where you really had to think and work outside of the box. But they all come back to the same need to apply first principles and basic understandings of a varied number of disciplines. Even if I don't do all of those specific things myself, I have to know how they impact what I'm ultimately responsible for. So my journey from water rat kid who just loved messing around with boats to a career in boats is an interesting one, and it's going to reveal a little bit about my stubborn nature. In 7th grade, we did this sort of module where we were supposed to pick what we wanted to be when we grew up based on answering a bunch of questions and adding up the columns and coming up with a total at the end that would neatly categorize us in a file folder of doctor, lawyer, nurse, carpenter, whatever. And for a kid who was fairly nonconformist in a lot of ways, this was a struggle, obviously, and you probably won't be surprised to know that my answer fell somewhere betwixt and between. And nor would you be surprised to know that the parochial public education system told me to choose again. Well, I didn't choose again. I filed it away in the back of my mind, and years later, as a junior in high school trying to pick a college, I enlisted the help of a girlfriend at the time who went to the big local city high school, and they had a mainframe computer that allowed you to search for colleges based on intended majors. And it was from that search that I found out about a little place called Webb Institute of Naval Architecture in Glen Cove, New York. It was one of 3 places that I could study this career path that I was told didn't exist. Annapolis being another, and University of Michigan at that time being the third option for an undergraduate degree in naval architecture. And of course, the guidance office told me that web didn't exist because the student body was under 100, there was no tuition listed. Essentially, it didn't check the boxes, and I didn't care. I wrote for information because that's how you did it back then, letters and mail and brochures. I got through the interview process, which was a story in itself, and I was somehow miraculously accepted into this wonderful opportunity. And so off I went to study naval architecture for 4 years, and plenty of yarns to come from that time period. It was just an incredible opportunity and a great time in my life. So I think part of the concept of how I want to proceed with this is, as I mentioned, there'll be some just flat out entertaining storytelling, but there are a lot of questions that I've received over the years, either specifically about Charis or about living aboard year round or about traveling, basically lifestyle type questions, but also specific technical questions. I want to address some of those initially, and then I'm hoping that what will happen is that will generate more questions and more input, and so that folks out there in the YouTube world, in the lifestyle of living aboard boats, can throw those questions out and lead to sort of further discussion, keep the ball rolling, keep the discussion going, and not tell you right or wrong or the only way of doing anything, because I don't believe there is such a thing, but just give you a perspective that comes from a different angle, and again, just sort of expand the community and expand my knowledge and the knowledge that I'm able to share, and the knowledge that I receive back just from being asked the question, because that really is how you grow. You learn more by answering questions than you do by any other method, I think. So that's the methodology I'm hoping to employ here. So I'm told the rule in presentation is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. To that end, this is where we start. So what am I going to tell you? Well, it's infotainment, right? It's a commonly used podcast term these days. It's information and entertainment. I think part of this will be stories, interesting stories that you may not have any other way of ever hearing, because I've had wonderful opportunities to meet some incredible people that have had a serious impact, not only on my life, but on the development of what we know as boats today. So there's an aspect of that I'm looking forward to. I also have an incurable need to tinker and take things apart. I was that kid who took his toys apart and got to play with them if I managed to put them back together, and didn't if I didn't. I do the same thing now. I want to know how things work. I want to know what makes the clock tick, and so there will be aspects of this where there are things that I want to share that have made a difference in my living aboard for the last 35 years, but that I've also felt the need to delve into and understand, so that either I can repair and fix them, or just plain curiosity. So that's another aspect that I'm looking forward to sharing. And there'll be, as you see, a second location here. This is the office/man cave. There'll be a third location, which is my barn/workshop, where some of this takes place. And I'm looking forward to bringing you along for the ride, and as I say, just sharing a different perspective than you might be able to find from other sources.